Hello and welcome to another edition of To a Radio Roundtable. Tonight we have our financial program, and tonight we'll be discussing taking Liberia out of poverty. And joining me for that discussion tonight is my co-host, and we have Mr. Chuchu Alex Jones. Alex, you want to say hi to our viewers out there? Alex, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you clearly. Again, thank you and welcome.
Thank you, Alex. Thanks for coming. And we want to say welcome also to Willie DeLong.
Yes, well, your host of the show as well. Just want to say that I'm glad to be here to be part of such a progressive and important, dialogue. And I'm ready to let's get the ball rolling.
Thank you. And I want to say thank you again. Oh my goodness, he going off. I want to say thank you again for joining me on To a Radio Roundtable. And to our viewers out there, we don't have all the answers, but we are joining tonight, joining the financial experts, and we're going to be discussing, issues concerning Liberia as usual. Um, and hopefully, you can also make your contribution. You can text us, you can call, whatever the case may be. We will be here to answer or respond to your questions. So tonight we are talking about how we can take Liberia out of poverty. So uh, we're going to start. I want to start by asking, because we know Liberia is one of the poorest nation, and I want to ask DeLong, why is Liberia classified as poor? DeLong.
Okay. Yeah, so I would say that Liberia is classified as a poor country because, you know, they have something called a Human Development Index, and depending on your ranking on this Human Development Index, uh, that would determine if you're considered an advanced economy or a developing economy, or what we used to say, first world country or a third world country. And so the Human Development Index looks at various factors such as infant mortality, meaning how many women die in childbirth, uh, the healthcare sector as a whole, the gross domestic product, what they call the GDP. They look at that, and that basically is the productive capacity of your entire economy. They look at that to see how much goods, how many goods and services are produced by your economy, the people in your country, and what is the value of that, and then compare that to other countries in the world to determine if you are considered a wealthy country or not. And at the present time, and those are just a few factors too. They look at rule of law, they look at the ease of doing business, and all of those things.
Thank you, Delon.
You see that.
We're just asking Delon. Chuchu, welcome back to the broadcast. The question was, why is Liberia classified as poor?
Okay, so
Well,
where I left
because
off.
the measurement that's used, yeah, and Dylan's absolutely right. The indexes that measure the different category of people, low income, middle income, high income, Liberia is at the bottom of that index in terms of the size and the growth of our GDP, along with other economic indicators, such as, like I said earlier, growth rates, things like inflation, interest rates, all those things, Liberia is lagging. So that's why it's classified as a poor country. Per capita income, for instance, I think Liberia is 600, whereas you have some countries like, Botswana maybe in thousand. But I mean, how much if you divide the total GDP by the number of people in the country?
Yeah, there are countries in the tens of thousands, whereas
Tens of thousands.
ours is in the
Yeah, right.
low hundreds, mid to low hundreds.
Yeah.
So once it's juxtaposed with other countries, then you can start to look at the ranking and determine who's poor and who's not.
Okay. And so the purpose of this program is to help individual as well as give some recommendations. So what can we do to change the narrative? What can Liberia do, or what can we as people of Liberia? What can we do to change that?
Well, I would say
You
first you
know,
got to
here,
elect people who understand economic. Okay, when you talk about poverty, of a country, you're not speaking on democracy. You're not speaking on any other factors. Okay, because Liberians don't understand. Sometimes they mix everything up. Poverty is an economic uh, condition that can only be solved by economic remedy. So whether you have election or not, whether election free and fair, whether or not the people like each other, they get along, it has nothing to do with the economic position of the country. So to answer your question is, we don't have uh, economic experts running our country at different levels. People who understand how to grow an economy. We have politicians. Politicians know, most of them know nothing about growing the economy. Most of them are not analysts or accountants or economists. So that's the first thing we need to focus on is get economic financial experts that will focus on that aspect of the country, and then the democracy and the political and social issues. You can have your regular politicians discussing those policies.
Dylan, we want to ask you the same question. What can we do to change that?
well, I agree with Alex that the economic factor is important if you want growth, if you want to take a country from what Lee Kuan Yew called from third world to first world, right?
Mm,
But I would have to buttress that, to go a little further,
mm,
and to say that I think when you say we need to have a more in-depth understanding of economics and have economists, control or make decisions that people should follow, I think you have to also look at economics is a social science. And so, if you agree that economics is social science, that means that you're dealing with human beings and human behavior. And when you're dealing with human beings and human behavior, nothing is set in stone, right? So that means that what worked for Japan will not necessarily work for the United States, or what worked for Russia may not work for China, and definitely what worked for let's say Britain will not work for Liberia. So in that instance too, then you have to also understand the dynamics of your people. There's a social aspect to it. You have to know what motivates your people, what does not motivate your people, what your people will stand for, what your people won't stand for. And a common example would be if you had an American president in 1979 that said we'll raise the price of rice, there would have been no problem in America. They don't care about rice. But when you say raising the price of rice in 1979, Liberia, the whole system started shaking, and that
everybody
led
fighting.
to you see what I'm saying? So there are different motivations, there are different sensitivities and things of that nature. And those things feed into the economics as well, because once those things started shaking, it affected the growth of the country. We had social instability, political instability that led to economic decline, and the whole system fell apart. So I'm just saying that economics in itself is not an exclusive thing when it comes to development. You have to pair it up with social programs that your people can relate to, and tailor it in a way that is palatable by your people, and then they will be able to digest it and embrace it and move forward.
Just to do a follow up on the response that Mr. Jones gave, he said we need we need some economic remedy.
Hmm. Hmm.
So
I
what are
agree.
some of the
Well,
recommendations?
and what Jelon said, you know, it's the debate right now in the economic community where how much social, how do you take economic formulas and policy, strict economic, what they call neoliberal economic system, free market, and how do you merge that with social impact? So I'm from the corner where you have to have complete neoliberal economic policy that is separate and distinct. You can't adjust your economy based on social activities. Social activity, which means, for instance, people always gonna want more. All right, you
Of
can
course.
tailor your economy to cater to just the whim of the people. So, for instance, you can drop interest rate in Liberia to 5%, which will enable a faster growth and a faster human social welfare. But then what that would do, that may probably increase the inflation rate that's already high. That will also put the country in debt. That will also affect the number of investors into the country because the interest rates too low. So that's two school of thoughts. And most times in Africa, we look at just the social political aspect. So we elect people based on what they say they're going to do for the people, whether or not the government goes and borrows, to the teeth to build roads, which is not an economically sound thing to do, but because it's popular, so these governments do it. Like you see what happened in Ghana right now. Kofo went and started to take huge loans. Ghana owes almost what I think $20 billion or so, and they took those money, they borrowed it for China, bilateral loan, IMF loan now recently, and they started building infrastructure. But that was an economically stupid thing to do. And so what happened? Now you're affecting the currency, now you're affecting jobs, now they have these high interests they got to pay for, and it's not benefiting. So you need to separate the two. You can't mix good economic, sound economic policy with social policy. I think Denon is on the other side of that argument, where I'm
With
strictly for sound economic policy.
Dylan, what would be some of your remedies?
All right. Well, I think one thing is that we have to invest heavily in human resource development in our country. I think we leave that out of the equation a lot of times. We like from with African countries, a lot of times we think, oh, the country is rich, and we are bountifully endowed. So we have all these resources. So definitely the country is rich. But as I stated to someone earlier today, that if you look at most of the developed countries in the world, whether you use economic indicators or you just look at the standard of living of the people in the country, a lot of those countries have no natural resources. A common example would be Japan or Great Britain. These countries have no natural resources, but they were able to develop the human resource. They don't have natural resources in the ground, but the resource that's above the ground, the human being, is what they invest a lot of money in. Make sure that they're healthy, to make sure they have a good education, and to make sure they're competitive on a global scale. And then what that does is the human being has one thing that you can get from nothing else, which is the ideas. And those ideas is what will give you the Facebooks and give you the Twitters and give you the Teslas and then make you competitive on a global stage. So I think one thing that the African economies always leave out would be the human resource development. And I think that pays more dividends than all
Right.
others.
But in order to develop the human resources, you need money, correct? You're talking about science, you're talking about technology, you're talking about universities, correct?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So if you don't have the economic power to do so, then it's a vicious circle. So you can't develop human capacity without money. And when I mean money, like in the case of many of these African countries, you barely have enough money to fund your budget. So those are huge capital investments we're talking about, tens of billions of dollars. So first, you got to grow the economy to a point where you can have surpluses and then the surpluses can start to invest in human capital. So I think that's the problem that many African countries, facing is that you don't have physical discipline. Whether you go to Sierra Leone, you go to Ghana, you go to Nigeria, so they're living on borrowed money. You can borrow money at 10% to come and build universities. That the returns on a university will not be realized for 10, 15, 20 years. So you have to do intensive capital investments that will yield enough returns. And then you can take the surpluses in order to go into human capital. So I think that's one of some of the mistakes, the economic mistakes many African countries made. They talk about, oh, we just want to develop human capacity. We want women's rights. But part of women's rights is women getting jobs. You understand what I mean? If a woman doesn't have job or don't have the ability to go take credit, she has no rights. So we focus on these things that really it's not really going to improve the living standard and the economic conditions or provide women's rights or men's rights or children's rights. You need money first to do those things. So I think government needs to focus on economic policy that would first create surpluses before you do anything else.
Okay. I mean that's a good argument. Uh, if I can, I would like to pose a question to that, right? So, what would you say about economies like Singapore, Japan, that had no resource to start with? Korea, South Korea, had no resource to start with, but were able to build modern economies.
Fiscal discipline. Like you look at Singapore, I mean, there were many years of austerity. You look at even,
Austerity measures.
like you
Okay.
said,
So that
Japan. So
means
these countries didn't start building universities, schools. China didn't start. The first thing these countries did after the war was they didn't go on and start paying the what you call legislator $15,000 US. They cut costs to the point where the budget has surpluses, right? And because they had good fiscal
thank you.
discipline, other people could come and invest in them,
So that means money
which
is already
African
there.
countries don't.
It's about what you so that means what you're
Money
saying
is
is
already
money is
there.
already there. It's about what you focus
All
your
countries got
attention
money.
on. I
Correct.
agree with
All
that.
countries.
Everybody has money. It's about what you focus on.
Correct.
Thank you. I agree with that.
Right.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Correct.
Okay. We're talking about how we can take Liberia out of poverty. So, uh,
Okay.
let's tailor our solutions, to Liberia. What are you know, some of the things, those things in our society that is hindering economic growth? Maybe it could be the system, maybe it could be our cultural identity, but something, what are those things you think that we need to change that is hindering uh, the growth of the economy?
Okay. Is that
You
the
want to
question
go?
Yeah,
directed
you,
to
Sorry,
us?
Telo.
that.
Let's start from Telo.
All right. Well, I think the problem is deeper than just what we see on the surface. So for me, one thing is that I feel that our people, whether we would like to admit it or not, are not as hardworking as they could be. And I think that's a nice way to put it, you know. But I think that we have to change our work ethic in Liberia, and we have to look at national development, right? Not only from a macro standpoint, from the government, the big government standpoint, we have to look at it from an individual perspective as well. And so that means that even as the government focuses on human resource development or empowering the people to go to school, because we got a huge section of the population that can't read and write. I think also the average Liberian now has to roll up their sleeves and partake in this development process to say we're going to work hard and contribute towards building Liberia, right? I think
Mhm.
also one thing that has served our people a great injustice is that our society is very fragmented, and so because it's fragmented, people always look at the society from the standpoint of what they can get out of it and how the society benefits them in their maybe tribal affiliation or their social group instead of thinking about how they can put into the system in order to make sure that the system generates something. And so I think being fragmented and looking at myself as only a Bassa man, or looking at myself as a Bassa man first before a Liberian, that means that I will cater to things that only Bassa people, and not things that lead to progress for the entire nation. I think that mentality has to be changed. And once we have a more national viewpoint, and we decide that we're going to work hard, then we can actually get on the global scale as one, on the global stage as one people, and work towards the best thing for our people. That's why I said there's a social aspect of it too, because um, there's a saying that goes, that's divided cannot stand. Or, I would
Yeah.
say people that are divided can never stand, because you guys are never working towards one objective or one goal. Everyone is doing their own thing. So I think
So,
that's
so
beautiful
Dylan,
too.
let me
Uh-huh.
press you on this. So you see, I'm a Bassa man. I want to open
Mhm.
a corporation in Grand Bassa County for my people and give them job. What's wrong with that?
Well,
Why,
I don't think
why
there's
should I be
anything.
serving?
I don't think there's
I
Why,
think
anything
why
wrong.
does it have to be united? I don't think, and the reason I'm asking that question is a rhetorical question. I don't think many countries are
Well,
united. I don't think in the U.S. here, they are united. What's united about U.S.? You got different political views, you got different economic interests, you got rich, you got poor, and I think I agree with you on the first point where you said people have to take their own initiative. Whether you have a governor or not, it's your responsibility to go out there and play your cassava and sell your cassava and grow it and make as much money. And you can live wherever you want to live in the country. So that's your responsibility. Whether you're in America, or in Switzerland, or in Japan, you should learn to start a business. That's how you're going to be wealthy, and then your family going to be wealthy, and then your community going to be wealthy. So I agree with you on that point, self-initiative. But the fact that if we're waiting to unify our country before we grow economically, then we'll be waiting till health freezes, because I don't know of any country that is as unified, and that's what's leading to the economic development. Germany is not unified. You got different political views. You got different, England, very, very disunified. You got Wales, you got other parts of England. So that's why I was talking about the economic side of things and the political side or social side are totally different. If you go back to Alan Smith, it's self-preservation, right? People don't do business for community or country. People do business so that they can benefit, and through their business endeavor, their own selfish aim, society benefits. I don't know if you agree with me on that point.
so.
I mean,
So
you have a
he.
valid. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So Delon talk about he gave the analogy of the tribalism in the whole in our in our community, which also hinder economic growth, because maybe you putting someone there into a specific giving them a specific tax where they are only able to do that tax, or because of tribal lines. True,
But
true.
then now you're talking about government, and that's why I say government is separate from the economy. So government can be very dysfunctional. Government can be very corrupt, and you can still have a prosperous country. Because if the businesses there and the individuals that are entrepreneurial, it won't matter what government is there. So look at a country like Nigeria, right? Nigeria government is very dysfunctional, very tribalistic, very corrupt. But how many billionaires we find in Nigeria?
There are
Look
a lot.
at Ivory Coast. Exactly. So what we tend to miss is we tend to think that economics and politics are one and the same. And I totally disagree with that piece there. Now, politically, the institutions of government can lead to economic prosperity, such as the central bank. If you have a good central bank in a country and you appoint a good central bank governor that is going to regulate banks and allow banks to give loans and things like that, it can help a lot of people. But you don't need a Dongo Day to have a good government to make money. You don't need Alex Jones to have a good government to make money. Yeah, yeah, America, Trump became president, people make money. Obama became president, people make money. It does not matter. So it goes back to economic knowledge and finance.
So
And that's what most
Jojo,
Liberians
how
don't know.
we're going right back to Liberia? How can we, you know, take away some of the ills? How can we better the society, the economy, taking into consideration the public corporations and you know how can we do that? How can we help Liberia?
Well, you need good economic leadership. So again, like I mentioned, the central bank. That's an area that I have a lot of specialization in. And my study have shown that the countries with the better central banks are the countries where you have higher growth and more economic stability because central bank is independent from the government or it should be independent from the government. So in
Yeah.
Liberia, since you don't have a lot of entrepreneurs, you don't have the skill, like you don't say, we don't have the human develop, the human investment, the human capital. You're going to have to use government now to create it. So government is always the lender of last resort. Government is always there as a buffer. So in our case, we already know, I mean, if you look around Liberia today, how many of the talk show talk about economic or finance? How many of our politicians can even know the difference between an asset and liability? So you need now the government to focus on appointing good central banks because central bank is the only institution that is designed to keep the unemployment low, to manage the inflation rate, and to lend. So that's the only way I see in Liberia, and that position has been politicized. And so if we just change that, if we create a good central bank team, you can have the worst government in Liberia, right? And I gave the example where in America, right, when Trump became president, people were saying, "Oh, when Trump comes, this is what happened." What happened? American economy grew, the stock market grew, and people made money. So the central bank is the key in Liberia. If you get the central bank with the top Liberian financial economic expert, they in turn will know what to do, and they will help ordinary people now, whether through training programs, whether through funding loans, they will help now create that lack in terms of the human capital, economics. At least that's my formula.
Dylan, we want to respond to that. Want to add to that?
Well, I do believe that the financial sector, the finance, plays a major role in growth in any country. That's because funding, money is like the lifeblood of the economy. It keeps businesses going and keeps businesses growing also. But I think though, like he said, the central bank plays a major role in you know a country being stable. But comparing the Liberian situation to the American situation is like comparing apples and oranges. Because in a country like Liberia, you have less than you have less than 10% or around 10% of the people that even really keep money in banks in Liberia.
That's true.
So whether you carry interest rate up, you carry it down, the average man, it
And
really
he talking
doesn't
about
matter.
stock market increase and all the kind of stuff, and we don't have any of that in Liberia right now.
So we have to implement those things because those the thing when you look at the Western financial system, you look at the Western countries, they have highly developed financial system, highly developed business sectors. Ours have not even been created. So I think one thing that would lead to development in Liberia would be to establish a financial system in the first place, right? A financial system that is regulated, brought up to global standards, and it has to be anchored in a securities market. We have to try to establish some sort of stock market in Liberia, right? Because we
Mhm.
do have companies. We have international companies in Liberia that have shares, like Semenco. They have shareholders like ArcelorMittal or like the gold mining company now they have in Kitma. These are international companies that are in Liberia. that have shareholders and people buy and sell shares. So I think that we have to try, if we want to develop our country and bring it up to international standard, we have to develop a robust financial system, be able to coordinate the banking system along with these companies that we have, whether it be international companies that are registered in Liberia, and also the smaller businesses in Liberia, right? The smaller businesses in Liberia they could assist those businesses with growing to the point where they could issue shares in the future. And then that will lead to, because if they're sharing shares, they're allowing regular Liberians to partake in the growth of those businesses over time. So I think that's something that needs to be done, not exclusively with the central bank, but also a regulated securities market that's associated with the banking sector in order to make sure that the everyday Liberian can partake in the growth of a financial sector. I think another thing we also have to do is to look at public corporations. A lot of these public corporations, or what they call them, autonomous agencies in the country,
Yeah.
a lot of these public corporations are almost insolvent. Some of them hardly generate any money, right? If they don't generate money, they need to be privatized, right? Privatized to the point where they become competitive. You bring in competition. And we saw this happen with the telecommunication sector in Liberia. Uh, it was a public corporation when it was telecom. When the Liberian government finally issued a license to, well, people that were working in the same government, but when they issued a license to private people, right? Eventually, that led to the whole telecommunication sector opening up, where now you have Lone Star, you have Cellcom,
Yeah.
you have
More
other companies,
competition.
mobile phone. Everybody came in, and it was a whole robust economy. I mean, robust industry. And now the government now, at the end of the day, just collect taxes from those places. You saw that Lone Star a couple of years ago. Lone Star was the highest taxpayer in the country, more than Firestone, more than ArcelorMittal. So we have to find a way to do that in other sectors. We have Cimenco, bring competition in. They shouldn't be the only one to have a monopoly. You
Yeah.
know, you have LPRC. You know, bring in other people that will be able to compete when it comes to petroleum sales in the country. If it's LPMC, find a way to revamp LPMC and make it privatized. You know what? And then if they're operating on one side of the country, let's see if we can get other people to go on another side of the country and assist farmers so that that industry will develop. So I think we have to encourage privatization and privatization of the corporations that exist now, bring competition and come up with more ideas of more corporations
Okay.
sell shares of those companies so regular Liberians can partake in the growth of those companies. And also, those companies will also provide employment opportunities. We will lead to income tax being paid. We will pay corporate tax to the government, and then we're growing the pie, as some people say, instead of keeping everything stagnant. So that those are just two examples of the things that I think need to be done. But you could look at it and say, well, is that going to come from the public sector or the private sector? The thing is that, you see, government plays a major role because government a lot of times can drive, investment and growth in certain sectors by the way they spend money in those areas, the decisions they make. Because right now, like I said, we have one cement company in the country. The government decides that, okay, you know what, we're going to open this sector up and sell licenses to people, and we're going to go out and look for people for the sector. We're going to grow that industry right away. So government does push the economy in certain directions too. So we have to look at that and say that it's both a social thing and an economic thing. We got to get our house together, but we have to focus on the right things. You know.
Okay. One last question before we go to our comment, and then because we are not here for too long, we see that when politicians are campaigning, especially presidential aspirants, they always make all kinds of promises. Oh, we bring companies, and these companies will come, and people will have jobs, and we will do this and we will do that. You know, they raise the hope of people. Give telling them that these people will come and then they will have jobs. So, in the absence of those people, and most of the time we hardly see like out of 100%, we only see maybe 10% or 5% of those happening. In the absence of company coming, investors coming into the country to, invest, what can we do? What can Liberians do to create, you know, their own jobs and to they can be self-employed?
So I
Children,
just
let's
want to
start with
piggyback
Well,
on
you
what
see,
Dylan was saying about,
to,
yeah, well, I want to
okay, okay, I'm
piggyback
sorry.
on
Let
what
him
Dylan
go. I'm
was
sorry.
saying in terms of, the companies and all that kind of stuff. Dylan is a brilliant finance, economy, accounting person. So it seemed very easy for him to say, we need to privatize the companies, we need to open more Sineco. The Irish Liberian politician, okay, or president, let's go to the president, knows nothing about the economy. Okay, I think they don't agree with me. They have no idea on how economy works. Okay, even you go back to some of our finance ministers, they have no concept on what it takes for an economy to privatize or to attract investors or to infuse capital into the country. So it, it starts with the central bank. You can say we need to look into it. We need to figure out ways. There are ways that is done. Central banks been operating from the 1600. I think the Bank of England started in 1620. Okay, if you someone who has economic background, a good financial background, you should understand how to manage the economy. You should understand how to attract people into the banking sector. The reason why people are not attracted into the banking sector in Liberia is because, first of all, there is no incentive. So let me give you an example of what incentive means. Incentive means, all right, let's say I'm giving $50 every month to Liberians. But I tell you that I'm not as a government, right? But I tell you, you're not going to get out $50 until you open a bank account at a local Liberian bank. Now you have a reason to open a bank. If you're selling, a bitter ball, you're selling okra, and the government say, okay, we're going to give you $25 loan a month, but as a condition for you to get our money, you have to open a local bank account and you have to put in every week a certain amount of your profit. Everybody will open a bank account because they wanted $25. That's economics. That's just common incentive economics. So the problem here is that we just don't have the people who are managing this institution. The way central bank, and I disagree with people who say America is different from Liberia, that's not true. All central banks in the world have the same mandate, okay, which is to grow the economy and control inflation and lower all central banks. Whether you're in Gabon or you're in America or you're in England, you have the same tools that the Federal Reserve has. Now, if you don't use those tools, right? So, if, for instance, in America, they had a banking crisis, they had a financial crisis, right? How did these people get out of those crises? The central bank stepped in, and the central bank were able to either provide lines of credit to the institution. The central bank provide funding to attract investors. So all the tools that you need in order to get Liberian corporation going or to attract foreign investors, they are right there. The same
Okay,
economic book
okay,
that Ben
Mr. Prince.
Fanaki.
Let's go back to our question.
Okay.
Yeah, let's go back to the question, and because we have to answer that. How can we provide jobs, or become self-employed in the absence of companies that people
It,
always promise
it's
to
very
grow?
difficult. And that's the same question I'm answering. In order for you to start a business, you need loans. You need capital. Okay? Capital can only come from banks. Now you can say you can borrow money from your friend or your family in America, but it's not going to create any substantial capital to start business. Let's say you want to start a block making business in Liberia, or you want to start orange juice in Liberia. If you don't have the capital, it's impossible. And the capital can only come from central banking policy and through the banks. So, it sounds complicated, but it's very simple. Nowhere in the world, no company in America can survive 2 weeks without capital. Whether you McDonald's or you JP Morgan or you Macy's, they have to issue commercial papers to pay the people. When they're expanding, they have to get loans to expand. When you start construction, you got to get a construction loan. So the reason these economies are so small. So if you look at the what you call the money supply, what you call M1, M2, M3. Okay, I know how to break that down. But the money, the cash. So every country has three levels of money. One is the cash, right? The other one you look at as credit, okay, and the other one are more advanced credit. So in Liberia, all you have for the M1 is cash. The M2, so if you have $20 billion cash and you have zero M2 or M3 or only 10%, you're not going to grow. Whereas if you look at any other country like Costa Rica or you look at country like Dominican Republic, the M2 and M3 are larger than the M1. So again, there's no ways around it. You have to have an efficient banking system.
Thank you, DeLong.
Can you please restate the question?
Yeah, how can we create jobs, or how can people become self-sufficient, not self-employed, in the absence of all the companies that politicians promise that they're going to be available when they win elections and all that?
Okay, so um, our country, Liberia, has had um, one way of looking at development for more than 100 years now, since the 1940s. So almost, okay, let's say 80 years, right? Um, it had to do with foreign direct investment, meaning money was coming from outside. It had to come from outside to come in before, we could make anything happen. But I see it from a different perspective, or slightly different perspective, because I do agree that foreign direct investment helps, or what we in Liberia call the open door policy. Foreign direct investment helps to speed up the process, but growth can also be spurred from within, right? And so my answer to that question would be that we have to, create opportunities within our system itself, and then we can point to those sectors in the economy and let our foreign donors or foreign partners know that, listen, we have already started something and we need help to grow this thing, right? And an example of that would be that's what happened in Japan after the Second World War, right? Similar to what Alex has said, the central bank in the country worked along with the local banks or the merchant banks in the country to target specific industries in the country to encourage them to give loans to people who had ideas that, okay, if you want to build a hotel, they will give you a loan to build a hotel and make sure you pay that money back as people come into your country. If people are getting involved in, let's say, import and export business, yeah, we'll help to make sure that you get the proper loans and help with the training so that you guys can go to China and bring goods in the country, sell it, but make sure you pay these loan off so we can give it to the next person. So we have to have a system within our own country where we understand that we have to take hold of this thing ourselves. We can't wait for manna to fall from the sky, right? We have to
Yeah.
have our plans. We have to be able to execute our plan. Even if we have a cassava patch, or agriculture bank that will give you loan to take your cassava patch to or 3 acre farm of cassava. When you get more cassava, you can sell more cassava in the market. When you sell more cassava in the market, at the end of the day, then we can go out there and look for pharmaceutical companies that they can use the starch from the cassava now, right? To sell it to make pills. Now you're making money. You see what I'm trying to say? But are the solutions, I believe, though we need help from outside, but we ourselves have to roll our sleeves up and work and say we're going to take hold of our economy. Instead of me building a big mansion for myself, maybe I can build, a nice house and make it a bed and breakfast. And that bed and breakfast can be a place that when people come from all over the country, we can list it on Airbnb. Now, if you get two, three, four of those, and you go to the bank and say, listen, I have a cash flow coming from three different homes. My cash flow is so a month every year, right? Plus, I have a job. So at the end of the day, I want to build three more. Can I get a loan from the bank? The bank can look at it and say yes. And then the government too is incentivizing, or the central bank is incentivizing these banks from loaning money to Liberians, and the money is being paid back. So I think that it can be spurred from within if we come with policies that encourage the everyday Liberians to continue along the lines of bringing their dreams to reality through entrepreneurship. As long as we make sure that they pay those, pay the loans back, and we
Mhm.
grow it that way over time. I think that can work.
Okay.
And I'm saying that because it has worked in other countries. That's why I use Japan as an example. In Japan, they call that window guidance. The central bank was guiding the local banks in the country towards which industries they wanted to grow. So if it's agriculture, let's give more loans to the farmers. If it's industry, let's give more loans to Liberians who want to open industries. The Dangote that Alex named,
Mention.
he was an import-export trader in Nigeria. But the government came up with programs and saying that we will give you guys tax breaks if you go from and then what he did was that he took the money he had been saving and went and bought some wheat milling machinery in China and started milling wheat. And from there he made flour. Dangote made money from milling flour and sugar right in his own country. But it was incentivized by the government, what we call window guidance. They guided them towards certain industries that they wanted to see grow. So I think it can be, we don't have to sit down and wait for, and I did say that, I know I may be sounding repetitive, but we don't have to wait for manna to fall from the sky. This is not the children of Israel in the wilderness. We can do something about this. We can roll our sleeves up and we can and grab a hold of our economy ourselves. At the same time, our government has to make it their priority. The development of our country has to be our priority, not just our own development, not only the advancement of our children and our family members. It has to be a nationalistic thing where we not only think of ourselves, we don't only think only of our countrymen as far as our tribesmen, but we think about the growth of our entire country. I think that will lead to growth from within and incentivize our growth.
Thank you. Let's take this comment. I'm sure the person is asking Chuchu. He said, "My thanks to you guys for the discussion. And my question first goes to Mr. Jones. If you were to become president of Liberia, what type of economic system for a poor country like Liberia will you introduce different from the current government's approach? Further, there's a report that the United States government is about to end all USD denominations in circulation that were created below 2021. Can Liberia survive with her own banknotes, assuming that was to happen?" So, Chuju,
Yeah, okay, yeah, that's a very good question, and thanks for watching. So, uh, the system, again, I will say nothing is new in economics. Economics been around, finance been around for centuries. Okay, you're not reinventing the wheel. The problem here is, as I mentioned earlier, we just don't have political leaders who understand finance and economics. So people become senator in Liberia, and they serve on the banking committee, and they have no financial knowledge. So Samuel Tuer can go to them and tell them anything. So what I would do is I would just implement liberal economic policies, such as, like Delon said. First, I think I will appoint Delon finance minister. He's very good. But what Delon will be instructed to do as the finance minister is to make sure that we create these companies. We create at least 30 Liberian companies, right, funded by the central bank, that is going to focus on different sectors, okay, of the economy, education, health. So those things are not going to be run by the government. The government going to put up the money. We're going to have these companies that can hire up to 1,000 people at a time, spread out throughout the country, and we give them a loan to get the best people. Again, Dylan said, "Oh, we don't have the expertise." I disagree. There are thousands of people graduating from all the schools in Liberia. There are people on the job market from India, Liberia, wherever, or America. Give them the job? So they will go, and those corporations that I talked about in my policy, that's what we'll do. We'll focus on creating, and the way we'll get the money is we'll just cut the waste in government. We'll just reduce the salary of ministers, president or giving president $2,000, or we're gonna cut all that mess off, and we're gonna take the money and we invest it in Liberian corporation. Like he said, look at Telecom, look at Lone Star. If Lone Star can operate in Liberia and become the largest taxpayer, what if we had 10 Lone Stars into different sectors? How many people will get jobs? How many revenue will have? So it's not rocket science. I'm just, it baffles me the level of economic ignorance, because why aren't we opening more Liberian owned and operated corporations? That's the way to go. So that's what I will do. And I think we shouldn't be using dual currency. I told Ellen that, in 2009. It's a big problem, because first of all, when you have no countries, only two countries in the world that has dual currency, like Burati and Burma. Okay, what the problem it creates is I have US dollars, I have Liberian dollars. I can take my US dollar anytime out of the country. So the people who's supposed to import, who need the US dollars, it's not coming through the central bank. That's part of the reason why people don't have bank account. You can use US dollars in Ghana. You can use US dollars in Rwanda. So you need that control over foreign currency, that when people come to Liberia, they have all your foreign currencies, whether the EU, is controlled by the central bank. Then it will grow our reserve, our foreign reserve account, which we'll use now for export, import and export, and we'll use some of that funding to improve the lives of Liberia. So that's the new year. You just got to follow our basic economic principle and hire good people to run the central bank and the Ministry of Finance. And I believe in 5 years' time, Liberia will be growth will be very high, and there will be huge employment opportunities. And a lot of people will make money because those corporations will be available for all of everybody. You don't have to see government job anymore. You can go and work, for any Liberian corporation, and you can make $10,000 a month. I don't care. You can back pay even $50,000 board. I don't care. So long you're making the profit and your board of directors are fine and you're paying the government loan back, make money. We want Liberians to be rich. We want you to make as much money as
Thank
possible.
you. Thank you. Dylan, you want to respond to the latter part of that question where he talked about the withdrawal of the banknote, U.S. banknotes. Yeah.
Well, whenever money is taken off the market, I mean, money is what they do is they print money in order to replace those banknotes on the market. So I don't think that that would be a problem in Liberia.
And also he wants to know whether we can survive in the absence, like if we never had the US banknotes, can we survive on our own? Can we survive? Can Liberia survive with their own banknotes?
Well, you see, the problem with our currency is that our currency is not a convertible currency. A lot of the currencies in Africa are not convertible. You can use it within the borders, but once you take it, or that what we say with the rate is 200 to one or 50 to one. That's just within our country. When you take those notes, whether it's in bulk to other countries, they don't accept them
Value.
for any kind of legal tender or anything of that nature. So really, in the world, the true reserve currency in the world is the US dollar.
Okay, we have oh
Okay, so the true reserve currency in the world would be the US dollar, followed by the euro, and now the Chinese yuan or renminbi is also trying to get on the global stage as well. But if for international transactions, import and export, we're going to need the US dollar in order to transact. When we're selling our iron ore on the world market, people are not going to be able to pay us in Liberian dollars. Liberian dollars is only used within our borders. So even if you have your own currency, you have to do business internationally with the American dollar. Now, whether we use it as legal tender within our country or we keep it within our central bank for foreign reserves, that's up to us, and that's something that we can look into to see if what the impact of having this dual currency on the market is. But what I've learned over time is that having the dual currency circulating in the economy creates a black market with the local currency, and that's what has been causing, you know, the difference or the differentiation between the price with the Liberian dollar and the Liberian dollars in our country. So people get in and run out of the country. So we have to conduct an in-depth study and see, number one, this is a problem. Once we have recognized that this is a problem, we come up with solutions on what can be done to stop it. Like
Mhm.
in other countries, they got like in China, they have capital freezes, or they have certain amount of money that they can allow you to leave the country with. Beyond that, no one can leave the country with that money because they need it within their borders to be able to carry on development or to carry on Liberia now, with our open door policy we have, you can make $1 million and run away with your $1 million and or leave with your $1 million and no one does anything else. So we have to look into these things and see how best we can stifle those practices that lead to slowing our economic growth down.
Okay, thank you. Let's take this other comment. The person said opening a bank account by petty traders is not the matter. There are lots of people with bank accounts in Liberia. But when you go withdraw your money, they restrict on how much you can withdraw from your own money. So under such circumstance, why would you want to keep your money in the bank that you don't have control over? That's his concern.
That's a very good concern, and that's because we have an inefficient regulatory system where the banks in Liberia are allowed to do whatever they want to do. Most of them are run by Nigerians and Ghanaians. We should be running our own banks. I think only LBADI is controlled by Liberian, but the rest of the banks. So we have no good regulatory control over those banks to say that if somebody can withdraw their money, they can withdraw their money, you fine them. And if they don't continue, you shut them down because you need people to be able to trust, to have confidence in your banking system. So that's the first thing we've been doing wrong. People don't have confidence in the banking system because the banking systems and the government are doing the in cahoots. So
Yeah,
one of the
right.
first things we'll be doing now will be cracking down on banks that are preventing people from taking their deposits, that are not lending to Liberian businesses and petty traders. We'll find it. And there are laws on the books. The central bank is responsible to regulate Liberian banks. And they're not doing a good job. So that it goes back to the kind of appointments you make, the kind of people that are running your finance ministries and your central bank. That's all it boils down to.
I fully
Yeah.
agree. I fully agree. I think the reason why a lot of these banks are not do not have the money to give these people when it's time for them to get that money is because that you know they may have already loaned out most of the money. A lot of these loans they're making to the Liberian government themselves, and
Yeah.
so the regulation has to be in place. They have to set the ratios in place where, listen, if you take $70 in the bank in case that person comes to make a withdrawal. You can loan $30 out and make sure there's a time stipulation to get the $30 back. We all know that these banks loan money out, but if you loan everything out, then when the person comes for the money, you don't have it. So those rules may be on the books, but they are not being enforced and implemented. That's why I stated before that we have to have a highly regulated financial system, and make sure that we bring it up to par with the international community. I mean, you go to the bank here now, and when you want your money, you get your money.
Of
Why should
course.
it be a different story somewhere else or in our
Okay, this
country?
this person said thank you. This person said Liberia should use their own currency in the country.
Absolutely.
Everyone must
Absolutely.
pay in local Liberian currency.
I
Liberia
agree.
is the only country in the world with dual currency or something like that.
Yep, that's
Mhm.
correct. That's very, very smart. Yep, I totally support that, and we will use our own currency because like you said, the black market is one problem. When you
Yeah.
creating financial reports in the country, it creates a whole nother problem because what do you say? You report your financial statement in Liberian dollar, then you got to convert it to the exchange rate. By the time you report it at 3 months ago, what was the exchange rate? How will somebody analyze it? They will have to go back and check the exchange rate. It's too complicated. That's why countries don't use it. We use Liberian dollar, and we just collect the US dollars to use as our reserve account like every other country. So again, and I tell you, Deloitte is good. You make a very excellent, and two, we don't need the finance minister to also be the chairman of LBDI or any other commission.
Well,
This
LBDI should be
person,
an independent bank.
yeah.
Okay,
This
part of
person
the
said
reason,
I
let
also
me
want to
just
say,
end this statement here.
All right.
Part of
Go
the
ahead.
reason why you have the corruption, why FBDI and these banks are taking the people money is because they're giving it right to the government. Every time the finance minister get
Yeah,
broke or the president want travel or they need money, they go to the bank because they're the chairman of the
they
bank.
borrow. Yeah,
So if you're the chairman of FBDI, who's going to tell you no? We can't give you this amount of money. So we need to cancel that thing all our system. No government officials will be running on top of any corporation, whether semi-autonomous or whatnot. So these things, it bothers me again. Why don't we see these problems? They're so obvious.
yeah.
Okay.
One thing I want to add to that is that everything that we have stated here, we did not mention rule of law, and that's very important. It's important to business because of something they call torts, right? So when you have uh, ramblings between people in the business world, they have to have that confidence to know that if they go to court, justice will be done and there will be real redress. That's one thing that allows international investors to come into your country or even your own people to say, I'm going to take that risk because, becoming an entrepreneur or establishing a business is a risk. But one thing that mitigates the risk is to know that there will be fair play, right? And in order to and in order to make sure that that happens, we have to incentivize our integrity institutions and make sure that we prioritize honesty and those people in the civil service, working in the government, or even in the private sector who are found guilty of any kind of malfeasance, right, should be punished. Whether is at the highest level or even petty corruption where the policeman taking 10 hours on the street. We have to crack down on that. And if we create a clean and efficient, honest civil service as well as a society, that too can bring about growth and prosperity.
Yeah. Thank you. The person said corruption is the destroyer of all economic plans and development. Corruption is killing Liberians. So that's Amadou Kamara, and he made another comment here. He said, "Who will want to invest in corrupt countries?" So
I think I
yeah,
think that's the
nobody
same
want to
thing I
put their
just
money in the bag, right? And then he said, President George Weah was elected to fight corruption in all sectors of national government. Well, and then we also address his comment, this one. Well, that's all for today. And we want to take your closing remarks before we close. We want to start with Juju.
Yep, I'm the guest here, so guest first. Though I think these discussions are very good, and thank you, Delon, because you bring a lot to the table, and to educate our people. Part of voting, you're voting for economic policy, you're voting for economic management, not just voting for political management. And so the more people get information, the more they understand how the functions of government and the political system and the economic system works, they can better make good informed decision when it comes to voting. So that's why I take the time to always, be a part of this kinds of discussion. And I hope other candidates will do the same. Come talk about the banking and the finance and how we can, help our businesses, give them loans, build our own corporations. That's what we're doing already with Lone Star and other local corporations. So these people are great people. They have the appetite, and some of them are doing a good job, but they don't have the support from the government. And that's something that I will be taking a look at and doing my best to crack down and making sure that every Liberian person who wants to do business will have the financial backing to do that.
Thank you. Thank you, Delon.
Yeah, so I just would like to add that development or economic growth is a very deliberate process. It is not it is not something that just happened by happenstance. When you see a country like Sweden or you see a country like Great Britain or Amsterdam, look the way they looks and produces as much as they produce, it didn't just happen by a stroke of luck. It happened by deliberate decisions being set in place and people following through implementing over I would like to just make sure that we continue these discussions in order to make sure that our people understand that the responsibility and the task of developing our country and moving our country forward, bringing our country in on the world stage in a respectable way is all of ours. It's not only just George Weah's responsibility. It's not only just the pro temp or the speaker or the chief justice responsibility. It is all about responsibility. So when we see that they are not living up to what we expect, we have to hold them accountable. We have to hold ourselves accountable and make sure that we live up to what we know true progress should be, and then serve as examples for the next generation or even our peers as we strive for the change that we want.
Thank you so much, Adelon, and thank you so much, Chuchu. And this has been a presentation by the 2A Radio TV, and we're discussing how we can get Liberia out of poverty. So join us again next week, Monday. We will be back here with another discussion on everything that got to do with financial, uh, financial and economic development as a concern the Liberian economy. So we want to say thank you for joining us, and we will be back here next week, Monday, hopefully the same time. So thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.